Thank you so much for that elaborate introduction. To sort of just kickstart the conversation, there's been a lot of talk around climate finance globally. And this has been obviously a huge topical issue over the last few decades. But before we go into the actual details, are you able to just briefly remind us of what climate finance is, and is it really that important?
No, climate finance refers to basically public, private, and blended financial flows that support climate change mitigation as well as adaptation. Now, this includes everything from funding renewable energy infrastructure or building coastal resilience against sea level rise, for instance. So this is basically, in its simple terms, it's basically all the efforts in terms of financing, both public, private, or even blended, that are going towards addressing climate change in terms of mitigation as well as adaptation. Now, why does it matter? Why does it matter? The simple reason is that we have run out of time. We have run out of time, and global climate finance needs at least triple by 2030 to align with the Paris agreement. At the moment, things are not going in the direction where we can be comfortable that we are going to meet what was agreed 10 years ago in 2015 under the Paris Agreement. So 10 years later now, when we look back and see how far we've gone and how far we've achieved in terms of our NDCs, in terms of addressing climate change, we leave it leaves much to be desired. And hence we are actually just we've run out of time, and hence we need quite substantial resources if we are to remain on track or to keep the Paris goal alive. But yet many, in this case, developing states, especially small islands as well as least developed countries or LDCs, they are still struggling to even access the bit of resources that have been committed at this moment. They are still struggling to even just access a fraction of that existing finance that is currently there. And this is a big challenge and worry to help or to ensure that we are meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement. Now, the current climate finance gap or climate financing gap is significantly large or big globally. Particularly, it's even more in Africa. Specifically, Africa requires around about 277 billion US dollars annually, to meet its commitments in terms of NDCs. But currently is only receiving around about 30 to 47 billion US dollars, leaving a gap of around about 230 to 247 billion US dollars. And this is according to the African Development Bank. If we look at emerging markets and developing economies, in this case excluding China, they need at least 2.4 trillion annually, and this is according to a report done by Climate Policy Initiative in 2025. Commitment of public finance, from developing countries or from developed countries is still quite very low at the moment, and is inadequate to meet the needed finance to meet the Paris goals that we committed in 2015. Now, last year in Baku, that was at COP29. Parties agreed to a new collective quantified goal on finance of at least 300 billion US dollars per year by 2035, and with aspirations to mobilize up to about 1.3 trillion US dollars annually, through various sources of public as well as private finance. Now, there were a lot of mixed feelings, a lot of disappointment by a number of, especially the developing countries, who cited or rather indicated to say this goal was actually short of what was needed in that financing gap. So it gives you a picture of how, the need, or rather the feeling is globally around the need for climate finance. So mostly you find that the finance that is available, the finance that has been pledged, is still not adequate enough. It also begs the question that against this goal that was committed, the question is, how does it affect their debt burden? Or does it cause them to borrow more? And how do developed countries come and help address some of these challenges? So those questions still linger up to now. So this is not just a financial challenge, but rather it is a justice issue as well. So those least responsible for climate change are often hit the hardest, and they don't receive as much resources as needed. We know of the small commitment that was made towards the loss and damage fund, but the required resources are an example of just when Hurricane Beryl hit the Caribbeans and most of the islands in the Caribbean region. We find that just one country can actually take up all the $300 million that was committed under the loss and damage fund. So it's important to understand that the financing gap, the financing need, is quite large for addressing climate change issues, and hence we are actually very late. We have run out of time, and we need to act urgently to address some of these issues. Climate action cannot happen without the necessary and required resources.